make some decisions. Web-based or CD-ROM? Web-based because it's flexible and you can link to other things. IWB or Media Centre, we'll go for IWB because that seems to be the way the world is going, and it stresses the role of the teacher in the blended learning process. And do we provide a huge bank of material or something divided up more manageably? And we went for that. So, web-based IWB, several worlds. We provide texts, images, audio, video sequences, serious content to explore and learn, and fun and challenging activities. In other words, a sort of hodgepodge, but with a sense behind it, variety. It's family of MEC, content-driven, clear, includes projects, and very importantly, it's a resource, not a course. So, what is about to appear over the summer are the first of 3 worlds. We refined our great bank of material. One which we call the animal world, which is elementary to pre-intermediate-ish. I use an awful lot of ish when I'm talking about this material, because it is input material with a bit of practice, and then the students do things with it at their own level. And so the flexibility is in the language level as well, I think, as the way you use it. The human and animal world, or worlds, elementary to pre-intermediate, and something we've called the natural world, pre-intermediate to intermediate. And in terms of age groups, the reason I asked you for what age groups you were involved with at the beginning was just to get a feeling for that. It's targeted at the sort of 10 to 14. Now, I know there's a huge amount of difference between a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old. And the first world, the animal world, I would say is more suitable for students at the lower end of that age range. And it might be kind of 9-ish. Yeah, you teach children, you know, you can't be hard and fast about children. It's a feeling. And other material in the natural world, I would say, is more suitable for the sort of 12 to 14. But when you see it, make up your own minds. And the important thing about the language levels is the difference between the input language and the output differences. And that's where the teacher mediation comes in. I mean, you as a teacher know your class. You know, is it necessary to pre-teach every single bit of vocabulary that they haven't met before? Or is it more important that they guess from context, etc., etc. And the animal world, as I've said, lower end of the age range, elementary to pre-intermediate-ish. What we did with animals and tourism was start with an animal which you may or may not recognise. And there is a clue. Does anybody know what that is? No. It's part of a Highland bull. The clue is obviously the thistle symbol. I happen to live in Scotland, so this was just up the road. And I make this point that a lot of the material, it doesn't all originate up the road from me, but it originates in the real world. It originates with things that the students might find around them, or might find reading, looking at things. So we started with the idea of an animal who, there's a bit more of Hamish, who is used as a way of attracting tourists. He's actually used, he lives in a field next to a shop that sells Scottish sweaters and kilts and shortbread and lots of tartan rubbish. And Hamish is a great attraction. He brings tourists there. He even has a snack bar. So that was the starting point for animals and tourism. And I'm sure that in every single place where you come from, there will be some kind of typical animal or animal used to attract tourists, used in some way. And this is quite an interesting area to explore. So, we started with the idea of Hamish in his field, and he happens to have a nice notice by him saying, beware of Hamish's horns. And the second screen in the sequence about animals and tourists actually gives practice, very, very simple practice, simple level, in listening to somebody talking about Hamish, this Highland bull, who is 18 years old now, and he sees a lot of tourists. And what the students have to do is something really, really simple, is listen, and then they have the possibility of choosing one out of two things. And like the Macmillan English Campus, the practice material, they get a score, they can retry, they submit their answers, they retry, they can see the correct answer, and so on. So this, if you like, is the sort of language bit of it, the language practice bit of it. And there are something like 6 screens like that, using information which the students listen to and read about Hamish. They also have worksheets, because I think it's important that anything you do in terms of listening and reading is active, that you're doing something with it. Even if you're just enjoying it, that's active. You don't just sit back. So they're actually asked on worksheets while they work through the screens to collect information about Hamish. They're asked what type of animal he is, what sex he is, what country he comes from, and what his favourite food is. And they also find out quite a lot about a group of people called tourists, who have some pretty odd habits. In the field where Hamish lives, there is actually this huge poster, and the very entrepreneurial marketing manager has invented, or semi-invented, this whole biography for Hamish. So they're up there in 4 languages. If your students, and this poster is incorporated into one of the slides, if your students were interested in this, you know, they could write a biography of another animal. Or you might think, no, that's a lot of nonsense, we won't do that. So the teacher's very much in control. And at the end of each of the zones, there is a project, and this usually begins with a web quest. It sends them to another website, and here they're actually asked to go to one which is for a taxi service in the area, and it too has a lot of information about Hamish on its website. And this, I think, makes the point to the students that what they're reading in the classroom, what they're experiencing in the classroom on the whiteboard, is not just something for learning English. It actually is part of the real world. And they could find out more about this animal, other animals who live in this area of Scotland, by going to the web. There's also a little video sequence of a tourist who went and visited and thought he was wonderful. So, and at the end of the project, during the screenshots, in fact, we have something on souvenirs, the kind of things that tourists buy. And obviously, a possible project would be to design your own souvenirs. If you were running the tourist shop, what would you do? Or you could do it as a parallel activity with an animal in your own country. But that's the sort of typical structure of each of the zones. That there is input material, there's a worksheet to use while you're doing it, and there's a project at the end of it.